Paws, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, coming at you live for as long as my voice holds out on this nice Tuesday evening. Welcome. So I see that we have 0 viewers and 0 comments, so I'll talk to myself for a few minutes. Oh, we got 1 viewer. Yippee. So welcome. Glad you're here. And I got to tell you, boy, we had such a great event last Friday night at the Texas Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame induction. I'm pretty fired up about it. So you guys let me know that you're here, and we'll start doing a little chit-chatting. I thought I'd start off by talking a little bit about what happened at the Hall of Fame event the other day. I'm going to wait till we get a few more people on, but I got a few notes right here that I've written down. And, of course, I do want to talk about what you want to talk about. Hello, Jim Allen. Man, I can't wait to hang out with you. Mark Dyer, good to see you, buddy. So, let's see here. I did get a, let me see here. I did get a question from John Funk about 5:30. Oh, gosh. Hey, Jeremy Day. Mike Cottrell. We want to hear your speech. Okay, let me tell you about that. The speech was pretty damn cool. Wait, that didn't come across right. I enjoyed giving the speech. And what's really funny, John Harson, absolutely did I miss you. I missed all you guys. Why didn't you show up? Oh, burn. So here's the deal. I do want to tell you a little bit about the speech because I really agonized over that. I mean, I can stand up in front of anybody and talk about ponds and lakes and fish and water and all that stuff. But I was charged with trying to have a speech that lasted maybe 20 minutes and figure out, what to say. And I asked probably 15 or 20 people over the last 6 months, if you were to go to an event like this, and described it, and you had to sit through a speech, and you leave the evening and you say, that was worth it, what did you hear? Well, I heard really 3 different things. One thing I heard was, we'd like to be inspired. Okay? We want to hear stories because you've been through some pretty cool stuff, which I have. And we want to be entertained. So I'm thinking, you know what? I can probably handle some of that, but I was just agonizing over what to talk about. And totally tell you straight up, I didn't know what I was going to say until I said it. So finally on Thursday afternoon, Jim Allen's camping out in Missouri. He and I are getting ready to hang out. So's Mark Dyer. We're going to hang out. We're going to go to the Institute of Higher Pondology. Oh, by the way, let me tell you guys this. We've had 3 people drop out of the pondology. And they dropped out mostly because Sarah Parvin is having some teeth extracted and she can't come. So I've got room for 3 more people, maybe 4 people. So if you guys want to come, John Harson, I don't want to hear this stuff about being poor. Yeah, Stephen Barnum posted some good pictures. And actually, you know what? If you guys, I think I can forward anybody an email. If you want to see some pictures, send me an email and I will send that to you where you can go to Flickr and look at the images. But, okay, so John Henry wants to hear the highlights. I love how you're thinking, dude. Hashtag Palmaz Magazine, click like, share this to your timeline, and you'll be eligible for a drawing for hey, somebody give me a drum roll. A beer mug with my picture on it. I have a case of these damn things, and I don't have any place to keep them. So we might just have a drawing here in a minute. I don't know. And something else. Here's something else. Here's a highlight. I show up, and on the table are these little coins. And so Bob Lusk, the pond boss, now has his very own challenge coin. Do you? Which is pretty funny. So let's see what it says here. It says, Texas Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame recognizes and honors those who have made a lasting contribution to freshwater fishing in Texas and fosters awareness an appreciation of and participation in the sport of fishing. So, I now have a challenge coin. Never in my wildest dreams as a grassroots biologist did I ever think that I would have anything like that, which is pretty cool. So, okay, so Scott and Leah are checking in. Leah's the winner of the fishing contest. Of course she is. Of course she is. So, the highlights were, well, here's the highlights. Going into this thing, I kept trying to come to grips with the fact that I'd been chosen and elected into the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame in Texas, which in Texas, that's a big deal. Now, I'd already been elected into the National American Fisheries Society Hall of Fame, or they call it the Hall of Excellence, and also received their Outreach Award. That was in 2020, and I couldn't go because they had this little thing called COVID going on. So I didn't get to really experience it. I got the plaque. And I've got a little cough syrup, so let me work on that a minute. Because I'm still raspy after 4 freaking weeks. I feel fine. So highlights. When I got into that room and saw the people, I saw friends and colleagues in agency, where Texas Parks and Wildlife was there. The COO was there, and I've known him a long, long time. The Director of Inland Fisheries was there. Here's a highlight. The Director of Inland Fisheries, Tim Birdsong, pulled me aside and he said, Bob, you know, back when I was a teenager, I thought I wanted to have a future in fisheries. And I grew up in Denison, Texas, which wasn't too far from where I lived at that time, probably 35 miles up along the Red River near Lake Texoma. He said, and I talked to my dad. My dad wasn't necessarily for it because he didn't think I could make a good enough living doing that. He said, but once he saw that my mind was made up, he told me when I was a teenager that I needed to read a magazine called Pond Boss. I had no idea about that. No idea. Well, so my words tracking back into the 90s, it congealed with me that the words that I've put out there have influenced people. And I better be right. And you know what? I've thought about that a lot. When I write something, I look at it and I think, I better be right. Even if it's an opinion, I better be right. Or I better at least put something out there where people can compare and think and then give them some basis on which to make a choice. Yeah, there was a September, October magazine. Call the office. Talk to Lee Ann. Hey, thanks, Scott. Call Lee Ann at the office, and she'll tell you if you didn't get it, she'll send you one. So anyway, then the COO of Texas Parks and Wildlife, I remember way back in the 90s, he was a grassroots biologist working out of Waco. And it was kind of an unwritten policy that the agency folks not do private work. And I knew that. Well, he would call me from time to time and ask questions, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you know what, this could be a conflict. But he's asking me questions, and I need to just answer the questions. So I did, and I would coach him and teach him what I knew at that time. And now here he is, the COO of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. He is a stellar man of integrity. He's a strong Christian, and I love him. And I'm so glad that he's climbed that food chain. And now if I want something on the phone, I can call him and talk to him. He's actually going to listen, partly because I embraced him. You know, what congealed in my mind that I hadn't really been able to just wrap my brain around. Hello, Dale Baden. We got to see Chris and Cody. We missed you, but they represented Texas Hunter very, very well, Dale. And I hope you're enjoying your retirement. And here's another take-home point. When you get elected into a Hall of Fame, this time last year I was thinking, I really need to start slowing down a little bit. Back I was 68. Now I'm 69. Not going to happen. I got to ramp up because you want to know what I know. And I've got to share that. I'm called to do this. That's my calling from God. And that congealed in my mind Friday night. I know it. I know it. That fire inside of me is spiritual. I thought it was just passion. It's passion, but it's also spiritual. Hello, John Wilson. Dude, you and I need to catch up. I know I say that every time I see you come on here, but we need to have a phone conversation. I want to hear all about you. So text me. I think I've got your phone number. Let me look. Matter of fact, I know I do. Let me see here. If I don't, I'm going to get you to email me. John Wilson. Oh, yeah. 216-789. Yep, I got you. Yeah, I do want to talk to you. I mean, we're longtime friends. I want to catch up with you. Hanging out in Ohio up there. So, yeah, that's the number I got. Dude, you need to erase that. You don't want people calling you randomly. So, the highlights were I was surrounded by people in agencies, in academia. Dr. Dave Willis's wife, we lost Dave 10 years ago. Susie came and hung out with us. She came to that event, and I know Dave Willis was there looking down on us. You know, so I got to see agency people that I like and trust, academic people that I like and trust in the private sector. And it's not common for all those people to hold hands. But that night, we all held hands. You know, and Dave Willis, way back 15, 18, 20 years ago, he asked me and Mike Otto if we'd participate to write a chapter in a textbook. You know, managing small impoundments in North America. That is now the go-to textbook. The damn thing costs too much, but that is the go-to textbook for small impoundments. And never before, you know, agencies look down their nose at academia, which looks down their nose at the private sector, which looks at academia as being on their high horse, and looks at agencies as those people that regulate us and can put it out of business. Well, now, with all these three different kind of entities holding hands, there's going to be a lot that gets done. And I'm pretty fired up about that. Hello, Kevin Matney. Good to see you, buddy. So, I just found out that my brother recorded my speech on his iPhone. And I don't know how to download it. I've got it, but I don't know how to get it and share it with you because that speech was from my heart. And I tackled those three things. I hit some highlights of people that influenced me. And then here's what I want to give you tonight before I start taking any questions. You know, for those of you that have watched this show and listened to me, you know that I really, really hammer down on the 5 concepts of lake management. Number 1 is happy water. If you don't have happy water, nothing else matters. Then the second part of that's the habitat of a pond or a lake. As goes the habitat, so goes what lives in it. So if you've got good, happy water, which is healthy, clean water, doesn't have to be sterile. Sterile water is bad water. John, if I can figure out how to post it on the Facebook page, I'll do that. But I just got it. Now I got to figure out how to do it. And once I do that, I'll probably put it on YouTube and then link it on the Pond Boss Facebook page. That's what I'll try to do. Now, my workload right now for the next few days is overwhelming. So it ain't going to happen for a few days. I'll have to tackle it probably after the next Institute of Higher Pondology, which, by the way, is October 24, 25, 26 at West Haven Ranch. Bobby West, Jacob West, Gabriel West Ranch. And I've got room for 3 people. So email me if you want to come. $1,500 all in. It's worth it, I promise. That $1,500 will save you a lot of money in dumb tax. So going back to the Hall of Fame induction, I was surrounded by all 13 grandkids, all my kids and Debbie's kids and their spouses, and my siblings. And on Saturday morning, I had to go back and do the Sherrilunker banquet. And one of my longtime friends I went to A&M with, Gene Gilliland, who was an Oklahoma fisheries biologist for his entire career, and when he retired, he works for BASS. He sidled up to me and he said, "You know, Bob, what's it like listening to your eulogy while you're still alive?" It was pretty cool. It was pretty fun. And then on Saturday morning, Debbie looked at me and she said, "You know, how'd it feel going into a room and seeing your picture plastered everywhere? You know, from beer mugs, to challenge coins, you know, to the posters and the program. I said, honey, it's kind of overwhelming. She says, well, it'll never happen again. And she knows how to keep me grounded. So it was, I guess that's really the highlights. And I got to speak to the crowd about, and here's where I was going a while ago. Happy water, food chain, or habitat, food chain, genetics, and harvest. That's the 5 things I preach. And, you know, based on that client or whoever I'm talking to, I dig down deeper into each one of those 5 things as it's appropriate. I mean, we go deep into water quality. I can talk water chemistry all day long. I could talk habitat. You know, the habitat is basically what different fish species and different size classes of those species, what they need in order to thrive. Okay, and then the food chain. If they don't have the right food, they're not going to grow. If they don't grow, what difference does it make? You're not going to have anything. You know, you got to have the right genetics for that situation, and you got to have a harvest plan. So here's what I want to pitch out to you tonight. And this is what I did in my speech. I want to speak in a metaphor right quick. And I want you to hear this, because this is really, really important. This is the stuff that got me into the Hall of Fame. And I promise you there's a lot of people out there, and some of which of those folks are you. And John Wilson, you're one of these people. You've been following your passion for decades. You know? And so here's what I'm going to say. Let's look at it metaphorically. What's your happy water? Is your water happy in your life? Because if the water in the pond isn't happy, nothing else matters. The fish aren't going to thrive. The amphibians aren't going to grow. You're not going to have the right stuff. So if your water's not happy, dig into that. And I'm getting somewhere. Then your habitat. As goes the habitat, so goes you. So what's your habitat like? What's your food chain? What feeds you? It's not a ribeye. If you think it is, rethink it. It's not a baked potato. If you think it is, rethink it. What feeds you? What feeds me is what I feed the flame inside of me. It took me a long time, way too long, because I'm slow on the uptake. For me, it's spiritual. What is it for you? Then the genetics. I mean, we are what we are. We can't apologize for it. We can't blame it. We accept it. We thrive on it. Then the 5th piece is a harvest. What's your harvest? What's your harvest? Friday night, I got to see part of my harvest, and it was very inspiring to me. So when you look at those different pond management concepts and think about how they apply to your life, then that gives you a little bit more pause for thought about the impact that you have on your life and those around you. And that was really my take-home point, the biggest one for what happened to me Friday night. I saw 209 people in a room, and I've impacted all of them in some way. And that was moving to me. So there's the highlights. So, Jeremy Day, listening to the Pond Boss, watching bluegill, hunting fathead minnows in my new pond that the Pond Boss inspired me to build in 1993 and help consult the stock. How cool is that? That's pretty cool. Wait, I didn't say that. So, yeah, John, I'll see if I can figure out how to post it. And John Wilson, I will figure out how to get in touch with you. I'll be driving some tomorrow. I'll ring you, and if I miss you, I'll leave you a phone number, which you can ring me on, and we'll talk, because I'd love to catch up with you. So, let me go find what John Funk messaged me on Facebook today. Bear with me here while I find it. So here it is. John Funk says, I'm not sure if you're on tonight, but my 11-year-old pond has just gone through a 6-week period without rain. the longest in our history in mid-Michigan. The pond is down by an easy 1/3. 6 weeks? Probably 6 months. You like that metaphor? Jeremy Day understands that he's a teacher. So is his wife. Cough syrup. So here's the cough syrup. I've never had Blanton's. I'd heard about it, but Steve Alexander, my friend with Private Waters Fishing, gifted me with a bottle of that. And here's about 1.5 fingers of that. Cough medicine. Soothing. Pretty smooth. So, John says, here's the question. There's no meaningful outlook for rain, and as winter's coming soon, how bad do you think the winter kill will be? Do you think the 35 inches, 20-plus pound channel catfish will leave me any bluegills? Removing the channel catfish at this point is not much of an option. Comments. If you're on tonight, I will be all ears. Well, hello, Latham. Need help with otters in East Texas. My trapper is missing in action. Suggestions. Find another trapper or learn how to do that. Jim Allen, really? Okay. Well, I looked up the price of it, and I'm kind of savoring it. Which Steve made me feel pretty good. I'm glad. And Steve actually came to my induction, so I was glad to see him. Ron, I can't wait either, buddy. I'm a little overwhelmed because I still got a lot to do to get ready for it. Plus, I got customer stuff, etc. Okay, so going back to John Funk's question, and I'm ready for you guys to pitch some questions at me. Hey, Jim, I don't know where in the world Steve got it, but I'm going to save it. Save it and savor it. I might bring it with me. I don't know. Okay, so how bad do I think winter kill? Okay, let's talk about winter kill. You know, the thing about me talking about winter kill in Texas is really the only ice we ever have is in a glass of tea or water. So I've got ice in this water, and I need to drink some of it. And up north in mid-Michigan where John Funk is, winter kill is it's a real deal. So when somebody asks me how bad do I think winter kill will be, I don't know. You know, my gut tells me when a pond's down by 1/3, if your standing crop of fish is higher than it should be, then you're going to have a winter kill. But the other side is if the pond is 1/3 down, that means the majority of the pond where the plants grew in the spring and early summer is now on bare ground. So what influences winter kill as much as anything is the volume of plants that go into the winter. Even though they're dormant, if they're still alive, they'll still photosynthesize or they'll respire. And there's not much ice that's clear enough to allow sunlight penetration to get down in there and allow photosynthesis. So they're respiring 24 hours a day. Kevin Matney, what have you already had, dude? You're down 4 feet in Luna Pier. Okay. So you've already had Blanton? Is that what you're telling me? How'd you like it? I'm kind of liking it. So, put in 20 pounds of minnows. My grandpa used to call them minnows. So, on a winter kill there, I think his assumption is because the volume of water has decreased by 1/3, then what's the risk of a winter kill? I don't think it's so much the volume of water as it is the mass of fish and the volume of plants and how long you have ice up. If you've got ice up for 10 weeks, the risk is higher than if you have ice for 5 weeks. So one thing I would sure look at is, and like with what John's got, John Funk, he's got some 20-plus pound channel catfish. Those fish have got to be 10 or 12 years old or older. And if he's fed them, they'll be 10 or 12 years old. If he hasn't fed them, they'll be 15 or 18 years old to get that big. So then you got to ask yourself, what are those fish worth? And if the value of the fish are worth X to you, then look at buying an aeration system, getting it in, and then use it to keep some holes open in the ice. Now, if you're going to use an aeration system, use a bottom diffused aeration system or a circulator. A circulator like Casco Marine sells. Look up Casco Marine for their de-icers. Look for their de-icer machines. What they do is move water horizontally or diagonally. If you use a bottom diffuser, put it in water that's not the deepest water. Put it in water maybe 5 or 6 feet deep and keep a hole open. Now, you got to use a little discernment, because if you have an open hole in winter and an animal gets in it, ain't getting out. If a kid gets in it, problems. So you need to think through that. So you got to compare the value of your fishery to the cost of an aeration system, and that's one way you can mitigate the risk of a winter kill. The winter kill is caused by more consumption of oxygen than there is production of oxygen. So oxygen is produced two ways. One is produced by photosynthesis of plants and by contact with the atmosphere. So when you get ice, there's no contact with the atmosphere. And if you got plants and no sunlight, there's no energy produced to allow for photosynthesis. So then the water goes into the winter with a finite amount of oxygen that gets consumed. And if it gets consumed faster than it can be replaced, that's when you have winter kill. So, and there's 3 or 4 other factoids about that, but that's the primary factors of it. And you got to just decide, is my fishery worth it? And if it is, figure out how you can make sure that you can prevent winter kill. Matt Ramage, hey Bob, down in Central Florida, I dug a new pond 18 months ago, a little over half an acre, stocked it with 5,000 minnows, 7,000 bluegills, let them grow for a year, and introduced 35 F1 tiger bass, females. Does that ratio sound right? Yep, sure does. Depending on how big, you say a little over half an acre? Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I think that's a great deal. So what'll happen now, Matt, be interesting to everybody, when you stocked it with fatheads and bluegills, let them grow for a year. Well, that means you had an abundant food chain. And those F1 tiger bass, if you did that recently, they're 6 inches long. This time next year, those 35 female F1 tiger bass they'll range from 12 to 16 inches long. Believe it or not, where you are in Central Florida, you'll have some bass this time next year, the best of those 35. There'll be 5 of them that'll be 2 pounds to 2.5 pounds. Then there'll be about 10 of them that'll be 1 pound to 1.5 pounds. Then the rest of them will be smaller than that. They're underperformers. So, look at all these stars coming up. I got to learn how that works. I'd like to hire you people to help me. Vito Barnes is in the house. He's figured out the stars. I think something happened with stars, and we might actually get paid. I don't know how that works. Okay, so let's see here. So there's Matt's answer. Let me see. Tom Davis. What are the pros and cons of introducing wipers in a 40-acre lake? Well, the pros is you can add a fish that fills an empty niche. So in central Ohio, in a 40-acre lake, I'm going to tell you maybe 20-25% of that lake is going to be conducive to largemouth bass, smallmouth bass. Another 20 might be, if the habitat's right, might work for walleye. But there's probably 50% that would be great for wipers. So wipers in a 40-acre lake in central Ohio could be a really good choice, especially if you got the food chain to support them. Now, the upside to wipers is you can feed them. Now, you can go broke feeding wipers in a 40-acre lake, because, if you stocked them even at 20 per acre or 25 per acre, if you stocked, 25 per acre, 1,000, if you stocked 1,000 wipers, and you did that for 3 or 4 years in a row where you have different size classes, you can have a lot of fun. And if you've got plenty of minnows, golden shiners, and maybe even some shad later, in a 40-acre lake, they typically have shad because they're on a watershed where those things live. I think you'd have some success with that, Tom. And it kind of depends on what the rest of the fishery's like. Kevin's got a 23-foot windmill with bottom air. That's a good choice. Have him email me. Have who email about you, what about what? Yeah, Vito, I love you, buddy. I miss you, man. I'll be roaming through Whitesboro tomorrow. I got to go get a bunch of stuff out of my shipping container so I can give it up. Jeremy Day, if you can please talk a little more about bluegill grow-out ponds. I got them in there and I'm feeding them. Not seeing any fatheads, though I put in 2 pounds. Perhaps not enough. You won't see them. So, okay, so Jeremy Day has got a hatchery pond adjacent to his his fishing lake. So here's the way that works. The bluegill that you stocked are going to grow up to the point where they start to reproduce. They won't get very big. That's the first thing to know. So those 2,000 bluegill that you stocked, or however many you ended up stocking, those will grow to be about 3 inches long and they'll start breeding like crazy. Now he's down around Plantersville, Navasota, Montgomery, Texas. So you've got a really long growing season there for bluegills. So it wouldn't surprise me with you feeding them that those bluegill will start pecking at that feed. And when they start pecking at the feed, they're going to begin to get to the point where they're about that long, and they'll breed when they're 2.5 or 3 inches long. So those bluegill will mature sexually, and they'll start to have babies. So what will happen over the next 12 months or so, you'll end up with thousands of 1 to 3.5 inch bluegills that you can catch and move into your big lake. My nose is itching. My mother used to tell me if my nose itched, somebody's coming to see me. I better lock the door. Don't be surprised to not see the fatheads. It takes them a little while to go in and reproduce and begin to build enough of a mass that they'll come to the feeder. All the while, as your bluegills get bigger, they're going to feed on those fatheads. So, so let's see, he says, no, 2 pounds is enough for that pond. Make sure they have spawning habitat. So fathead minnows like to stick their eggs on the underneath side of firm objects. Pallets, rocks, PVC pipe structures. One thing I'd look at, Jeremy, I'd go and I'm sure you have a friend that's in the plumbing business. See if you can find some 4-inch sewer pipe that's real thin wall, and cut some in about 2 foot to 30-inch lengths and bundle them and put them in shallow water, and those fathead minnows will go in there and stick eggs all over them. They'll also stick their eggs on pallets. But put something in that you can remove, so if you need to get in there and seine, you can get those fish out. We'll pause a minute and do a commercial. Hey, Pond Boss Magazine, $30 a year. Say it with me, kids. Cheaper than a Friday night date and last a year. If you haven't subscribed, do it. Kevin Matney says, get you Pond Boss now. Because there's nuggets in there, I promise you. There's nuggets in here that will help you. Almost every issue I get an email from somebody that got something out of it. And I promise you there's enough good stuff in there because it's written by a Hall of Fame guy who edits his writers. Texas Hunter Feeders, Chris Blood, Cody Borgfield, they were there Friday night supporting me, and I love that, and I love those guys. I love their customer service. I love their products. You know, I totally believe in those guys. They are in this industry to stay. You know, we're coming into hunting season. So go to TexasProducts.com, and TexasHunterProducts.com, and take a look at what they have. If you've got a ranch, you need a road feeder, they got it. They've got new dog feeders out there. They have fish habitat. So, hey, Chris, the fish habitat's a little pricey. I know you got a lot of R&D in it, but you know what? It's good stuff. If you can overcome the sticker shock, buy some of that. But their fish feeders, I've been working with those, using those forever. I love them. Purina Mills. We had David Nelson and his lovely bride Abby were there Friday night to support me, and so was Kurt Schultz from St. Louis. And it's humbling to know that people travel that far just to come pay tribute to me being elected into the Hall of Fame. Steve Alexander, Private Waters Fishing. David Schneiderman, Easy Docks of Texas. Whoa, listen to this. Bird Dog, my son Jonathan, this is a big deal. You guys need to check this out. Go to Fox News business website page and look up Bird Dog. BirdDogIt.com, my son's hunting business, just partnered with Field and Stream. And it's going to be huge. Huge, I'm telling you. My son has got a giant entrepreneurial spirit. Proud to call him my son, but you know what? Even if he wasn't, what that guy's doing is pretty dadgum magical. He's thinking way outside the box, which I've pounded into his head for a long time. But I didn't have to pound it in much. The guy's pretty damn sharp. So you guys check out Bird Dog It. If you know that a niche that he's figured out is there's a lot of folks his age, which is like 35 to 45. I think Jonathan is now 42 with 3 little kids. And he never was interested in hunting. He played sports. He was a great football player, really great basketball player, ran track, played baseball in a 3A school. So he didn't really have time to want to go hunting. I mean, I took him with me when I did my fishery stuff. Wasn't his deal. Now that he's gotten a little older and realizes he missed some opportunities to hunt and fish, now he wants his kids to learn about it. But if you want to hunt, like in Texas, for example, you got to know somebody with a ranch, or you need to work with an outfitter, or you got to sign a lease with liabilities that go with it. And he didn't like any of those. He doesn't have time to manage a lease. Outfitters, you got to plan too far out. He doesn't have a whole lot of friends with excess animals that they want to shoot. So he came up with an idea on how to create a company that's kind of like an Airbnb for hunting, where he goes and he cultivates relationship with ranches that have a bounty of animals that they need to harvest, and maybe not necessarily want to deal with the general public, and then match them up with hunters or people that want to be hunters, teach them, give them hunter safety training, teach them how to use weapons, and then get them and their kids out. And it's really working good. So check that out. It's a pretty good commercial. I hope he watches it. Aaron Schultz, is there anything as too many bluegill when trying to grow bass? One of the things that I've loved about learning about this bass bluegill thing is there's really only 4 scenarios. There's too many bluegill, too many bass, balanced, or a transition between these 3. Very, very rarely do I come across too many bluegills. Now, what typically happens to have too many bluegills is you stock your pond with forage fish and you wait too long to add the bass. Now, too long means 18 months or 2 years. So when that happens, then the bluegill have a tendency to minimize recruitment, not only of the bass, but also of bluegill and fathead minnows and things like that. So I'm going to tell you, Aaron, on a very rare occasion, less than 5% of the time, I see too many bluegill. And it's not hard to rectify that, because you can rectify it several ways. You can trap some bluegill and eat them, catch them, whatever, or you can stock some bigger bass to feed on them. So I do see that, but this is I'm wrapping up my 45th year. 45 years. I'll drink to that. I've probably seen that 10 times out of thousands and thousands of lakes. Scott, trying to understand crappie populations, how they impact bass populations. I'll tell you how they impact. Okay, Scott, I see where you're going. Crappie populations and how they impact bass populations. There's so much information and carrying capacity for bass and bluegill. But what about crappie? Does having crappie lower your bass capacity? Oh, I think it does, because they compete for forage and spawn first. That's it. That's what happens, Scott. So what happens is crappie are unpredictable spawners. First of all, we don't know if they're going to spawn or not, because they're real finicky. I can remember several years. I remember one year in particular, probably 10 years ago, where in North Texas, every Thursday, it was weird as hell. Every Thursday we had a cold front blow through in the spring. And all it had to do was to drop the temperature 3 degrees, and the crappie would go from where they'd staged to spawn, go deep. Then the front would blow through, and then Monday or Tuesday they'd start moving shallow again to get ready to spawn. And then Thursday we'd get that next cold front with rain, it would shove them deep. So if they don't spawn, they'll absorb their eggs and then just not spawn. But so what happens with crappie, and typically in warm water ponds and lakes, they're the first ones to spawn. Now, you know, where Michael Eric lives and John Funk, you know, crappie are not the first to spawn. Yellow perch would be, then smallmouth bass, then crappie. But in warm water ponds and lakes, crappie are typically the first ones to try to spawn. So when they do have a successful spawn, their babies are coming off the beds and they're feeding on the young of the year of the next fish that spawn. And the fact that crappie have a really small mouth, they feed lower in the food chain than like a largemouth bass does, or even a channel catfish does. Channel catfish are predators, by the way. They're not scavengers like people think. So I think the carrying capacity for bass and bluegill is not necessarily influenced by crappie, but what is influenced by crappie is the food that bass and bluegills eat. You know, bluegills are limited to what they can eat based on mouth size. So when you've got bluegills with mouths about as big around as the eraser on a number 2 pencil, you know, and crappie have a mouth about as big around as a quarter, largemouth bass about as big around as your head. You know, crappie have a tendency to be feeding on those small to intermediate size bait fish items, which prevents them from getting to the size that the bass need. So while crappie don't necessarily influence carrying capacity for those of you that haven't really heard that term, it's how many pounds per unit of a species can a pond hold and what can it support. You know, so while crappie don't necessarily impact the carrying capacity of a pond for bass and bluegill, it certainly impacts the food chain for those different fish, which what that extrapolates out into is even though you may have a carrying capacity of 50 pounds of bass per acre, the relative weights of those bass can be influenced by what the crappie eat. So there you go. There's your profound moment of the day. I'm so glad it was me that came up with it. Ron, me and you cooking gumbo. John Dyer, you're going to be in for a treat, dude, because I'm telling you, our Cajun friend, and it took me, Ron, remind me, did it take me like 3 years to learn how to pronounce your name? Ron Ardouin? Did I get it? That guy, I tell you what, Ron and his dad are a couple of studs, you know. I got to spend time with Ron's dad down at the Cabone, down there in Lake Charles, Louisiana. He's got the coolest place down there. I need to go back. I wish I could steal away and go tomorrow, but I can't. You know, but golly, those guys, they know how to make some Cajun food. So, Ron, I'll ring you here pretty soon. I got to go buy food ingredients and stuff for the Institute of Higher Pondology. Oh, Institute of Higher Pondology got room for 3 more people. We got 5 people signed up. Actually, we have 6 people and a 13-year-old. So it's going to be really, really fun. But I do have room for 3 more people, and I'm going to love it. Hey, Joel, good to see you, buddy. So, John, shoot, I put 20 pounds of fathead minnows in, and now I have to, there you go. Fathead minnows are like little underwater rabbits. There you go. So let's see here. Good place to get aluminum sulfate at a good price. You might as well ask me where to buy a good T-bone for a good price. You know, Mike, let me think about it a minute. I used to buy aluminum sulfate. Where did I get it? I quit doing that a few years ago. I started delegating that. So, I'm going to give you something just a little bit creative here, Mike. I know you spend time in Palapena County. and I think you live in Fort Worth. I don't remember. But they use aluminum sulfate a lot in water treatment plants. So Mineral Wells gets their water mostly from Palapinta Lake. So once you get in touch with the Mineral Wells, Texas, water treatment people and find out where they source it. That's what I would do if I wanted to, and I don't. So you do. You do it. Find it out, dude. Let me know. Matt Ramage. Should I call out the underperformers? Probably. But here's the thing about that. You have to differentiate the underperformers. And you're really not going to tell that until they're 3 years old. So once you get to 3 years and you can start to see by looking at relative weights, here's the kind of the caveat. Underperformers are either going to be males that are performing normally, just not compared to the females, or it's going to be the females that aren't comparing to the other females in your lake. So, if also which it being all female. Oh, okay, I missed that. Being all females F1s, 3 years. Well, you know what? No. How many should I wait to add bass? Start culling after the 3rd year. That's when you can differentiate those underperformers or those 35 bass you put in. Here's what you're going to get. 35 bass, you're going to have 10 of those that are going to be excelling or above average. Then you're going to have about 10 that are going to be average. The rest of them are going to be underperformers. Add some every year. Because what happens there is if you'll add those fish in every year, then you have size classes coming on as though they reproduced, which mimics nature, and that will have a positive influence on your food chain. Now here's where having an all-female bass population gets a little tricky. If you don't recruit a few fish each year, then you start seeing some kinks in your food chain. You wind up with some missing size classes. You wind up with too many big fish and a whole lot of little fish that aren't being consumed. So if you can mimic what nature would do, but you have total control over the bass numbers, I would stock a few each year. Hello, John Dyer. John C. Dyer. Did John C. Dyer, do you know John Dyer? Are you like kin folks or what? Mark Dyer didn't need to bring your fishing poles and bring clothes you can get wet in. Yeah, we're going to put your ass to work. Okay, let's see here. John Dyer and John C. Dyer. Are you like twins or what? Okay, I'm about to run out of gas here. Okay, we got Dustin Fredrickson. Hey, Dustin. A new face. If you could summarize happy water along the lines of alkalinity, hardness, Secchi, pH, what would that look like? My pond, 4-year-old pond, central Wisconsin. Need some cheese, dude. Hybrid bluegill, yellow perch, takes on a feeder and billions of fathead minnows. I've learned everything I know from Pond Boss magazine. That's kind of scary, isn't it? No pressure here. But you got it. Matt, how many? 5 to 10? 20. Stock 20. If you only stock 5 to 10, how many of those are underperformers? Stock 20. Some of them are going to get eaten. Okay, so let's go back to Dustin. Happy water, alkalinity needs to be at least 40 parts per million, up to 150. Hardness, not that relevant. So if hardness is 100 to 150, that's good. Secchi in the springtime and summer, 24 inches. pH, 6.3 to 7.8 is perfect. That's what that looks like. Hybrid bluegill, yellow perch, Texas hunter feeder, billions of fathead. Those billions of fathead minnows won't stay that way that long. They'll disappear. And they'll disappear because the other fish are thriving. So there you go. All right, Matt, dude, I'm glad that you're happy with that. You know, guys, I got to tell you, I really love what I do. And it's sincerely an honor to be able to sit here and talk to you guys, knowing that you're soaking this in. And to, my son Jonathan said, Dad, I really thought when I was a little bit younger that I was going to be the one to build a legacy. But he told me Friday night, he says, you've built a legacy. And I can't wait to help carry it on. And that moved me. And you know what? Everybody here that's watching this, you get to build a legacy and you get to help carry it on as well. And I hope that you see that. I hope that you get it. And I'm honored that you're performing and participating in mine. And there's a little debate on TV, and Debbie's got it on pause in there for me, and I'd like to go watch that because we have a strong senatorial race here in Texas, and I want to go check it out. But I'm going to bid you farewell for now. Jason Dodd, my good friend from Kansas. Hey, you know what? Jason Dodd, I am so glad that you took the time to figure out what to do. Because, dude, I'm telling you, you could have paid some dumb tax. But here you are with a Great Lake, in spite of your neighbor. Let him watch this. And you've got some really, really good fish. Okay, Scott. All right. Here's what we're going to wrap up with. Follow up on crappie is carrying capacity for crappie 2 to 3 times higher. No, it's not. Not anywhere near bass. It's going to be maybe 1/3 of what bass is. Standing carrying capacity for crappie maybe 20 pounds per acre, where bass could be 50 to 75 pounds. What's the forage to add for a 75-acre lake in Missouri? Depends on what you've already got. I'm getting ready to come to Missouri at the end of October. I'm coming to western Missouri to consult with a guy north of Joplin, that I'm going to work on a lake south of Kansas City. And if you want to write a check, since I'm a Hall of Fame fisheries biologist, I'd love to come talk to you about a 75-acre lake. I'm not going to tell you to put any fathead minnows ever in a 75-acre lake. That's pissing on a fire. Don't do it. It's not worth it. If the bluegill population is good and the gizzard shad or other forage, then for a 75-acre lake, you'd want to adjust the predator fish rather than the forage fish. So, we've been rocking and rolling now for 52 and a half minutes, and I'm going to wrap it up. So, I want to just tell you one more time how much I appreciate you guys joining in. I don't know where I'll be next Tuesday, but I got a feeling I'll be with you. Hey, if any of you are interested in the Institute of Our Pondology, I got room. 3 more people. And if it ain't you, it might be your running buddy. So holler at me, let me know. And until next Tuesday, from your Hall of Fame fisheries biologist, adios for now.